What is the biggest, most overlooked trigger for CPTSD symptoms? It's one that happens all the time, and it's a trigger for a lot of people, not just people with CPTSD. It's hurrying. Hurrying is so normal, right? We all do it. We do it all the time. But when you have CPTSD, hurrying very easily turns into overwhelm. And though you probably think, well, it's not really possible to live without hurrying and getting overwhelmed, because there's so much to do, right? But if you're hurrying when you're doing your job or caring for your kids, it can trip you up and it can sabotage the most important things in your life, because for people with CPTSD, hurrying can set off dysregulation. Now, no one ever told me this, but once I knew what neurological dysregulation was and started working hard to get re-regulated again, that's, what I'm always teaching on this channel, I realized that hurrying was right up there with the big triggers like abandonment, getting criticized, and hurrying. So when I first published this one, it struck a huge nerve with my audience. So I wanted to bring it back, my video about hurrying. I think hurrying is a massive trigger that nobody talks about. I have it bad. When I hurry a lot, because I'm always trying to do a little bit more, I bite off more than I can chew, and it gets me very, very dysregulated. Now, if you don't know about dysregulation, in a nutshell, this is a sort of a core symptom for adults who had trauma as kids and others. Everybody gets dysregulated sometimes. Most people can re-regulate fairly quickly. CPTSD means we get maybe more dysregulated and it's harder to come back. And what it is if you do a brain scan, brain waves that normally are sort of operating in sync together are kind of going all over the place. We get triggered by something kicks off an emotion, usually it's not even conscious, and things start to get discombobulated there. It can also affect vital signs, it can affect blood flow. It's no joke. It's something that's strongly impacting the central nervous system, which in turn drives all your endocrine system, your immune system, your heart rate, your breathing, and your digestion, and your emotions, and your ability to focus. So it can be very pervasive, the effect of dysregulation. The trick of healing CPTSD is to be able to go, whoop, I'm dysregulated, I'm going to pull it back right now, and to learn techniques that work for you to get re-regulated. So I noticed that hurrying and getting overwhelmed was such a huge dysregulator for me that I featured it in a major video in my dysregulation bootcamp. That's this course I offer, and if you want to see it, I'll put a link in it below. But just for now, I want to give you some tips on how to notice when the hurrying trigger is happening and how you can start to change that. So hurrying it's a common thing that people do. It's a dysregulator, but it's also just common. It's everything from trying to get out the door in the morning to driving in a rushed way, through traffic, gotta get there. Or just getting overwhelmed with everything that you're trying to get done in a day. It can definitely strike when you're helping kids or working with other people, multitasking, all that stuff. You start to hurry. It is a very normal thing that we do. And here's the thing, most hurrying comes not because of society, not because of technology, which some people might say, but it's from something more ordinary than that. And are you ready? The reason we have so much hurrying is procrastination. It is. We all do it. Not getting up out of bed after the alarm goes off, not getting out the door or leaving enough time to get where we're going. Do you do that? I do. And what's one huge reason we procrastinate? That's right, dysregulation. So it's a vicious circle. Procrastinating, dysregulating, hurrying, dysregulating, procrastinating, and doing it again. So our minds go down that road easily, but our minds love a sense of spaciousness in time. So taking your time is wonderfully regulating. When is the last time that you took a shower and you stopped and you just enjoyed the feeling of the water? Or you brushed your teeth without a feeling of pressure to hurry up? This pushing all the time, it can overwhelm us, and overwhelm all by itself triggers dysregulation. So our minds love doing things with careful attention, but the PTSD in us feels scared of slow, mindful processes because the bad feelings might get in. Do you have that? There have been times when I stopped to think about why I was hurrying so much all the time. And the best I could come up with was that I felt like I was being chased by emotions. And so I gave a name to that feeling, and I call it feeling like I'm being chased by a pack of wolves. And funnily enough, when I sat in meditation and I imagined wolves coming and getting me, like I just let it happen, nothing terrible happened. I mean, there aren't actually wolves. It was emotion, and it might come and get me, and it was a feeling of usually sadness, and at the very worst, I might have a little cry, and then the feeling passes. Like, it's so simple, and if you can let that feeling kind of wash through you, you don't have to hurry so much. You don't have to keep running. You can kind of just take things at a healthy pace for you and for your mind. But for a long time I was running, and I hurried, and in my kind of dysregulation, hurrying makes me start losing my keys, spilling my coffee down my shirt or in the car. So then I end up way late getting to where I'm going. And one time, in a 2-week period where I was intensely dysregulated, something really bad had happened. I was really, really in my PTSD. But I drove away from the gas station with the pump still in my car. And then I also rear-ended a truck on the freeway. So talk about those brain-wavy lines like a river running over rocks. You know, it's just like, it was so hard for me to stay focused enough to do a sequence of things like pump the gas, take it out, put it back in its holder, screw the cap on, shut the door, get back in the car, start the car, drive away, pay attention to the cars in front of me on the freeway, key thing. Luckily, no one was hurt, but it was a moment, it was a couple weeks in my life that made it very clear to me that something was wrong, And in a way, I'm grateful for those times because nobody was hurt, because they propelled me to find out what CPTSD was. I ended up getting EMDR right after that period, and it did amazing things for me because I was dysregulated by some recent traumas that had happened. So you can learn about EMDR in some of my other videos on treatments. So I'll be sure to put a link to that down below too, so you can learn about treatments if you like. But when I'm dysregulated, also some other things I do is I'll start bumping my head. I drop dishes. I'll be washing dishes, and I'm not like applying pressure with my hands to them and holding them. They're just kind of slipping out, soapy dishes. And the worst of it is I can't get anything done. When I'm dysregulated, I'm sitting there and I start a task and then I distract and I go do something else. And they say that a lot of people who have been diagnosed with ADHD, once their practitioner knows about CPTSD, sometimes that may be what it is, that it mimics ADHD because of that difficulty paying attention and focusing. So the difference is with CPTSD, you can learn to re-regulate, come right back, and do things one at a time. I use a little task calendar called a Kanban flow board. I love it. And I tell you, I should get kickbacks because I always talk about this. There's a lot of Kanban tools, Kanban. And I write my tasks there and I color code them. And I pay attention to this list, like in the morning, in the evening, sometimes throughout the day. I delete things I complete. My mind loves to stay on task. It loves order. And in fact, order begets order. So the more I kind of work in a structured fashion, the less dysregulated I get. And so then more time opens up in my day to continue to have creative thoughts or to be in touch with myself or to be clear, like I need a cup of tea right now. I'm really thirsty. Because all that stuff just, when I'm dysregulated, I'm not in touch with myself. So the irony about hurrying is it just ends up making everything take longer. So you do have time to slow down. If you are from the United States, you will remember the kids show Mr. Rogers. And I've been talking about this again lately. I talked about it in the course on dysregulation. But I was talking about Mr. Rogers again for people from Australia and Europe who were on the call I was on. And he is one of the heroes in my pantheon of people who helped me survive my childhood with my spirit intact. And there's this beautiful documentary that came out a few years ago called Won't You Be My Neighbor? And I highly recommend it. It was really neat for me to see that the way that he was wonderful for me was intentional, that he saw himself as sort of having a ministry to help kids who were struggling. And it worked. It worked for me. There's also a dramatic movie about him where Tom Hanks plays him, and that's called, I think, Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And I loved that movie just as much. I cried. It was really nice. What a good person. My grandmother, who cared for me after preschool every afternoon when I was like 4 years old, she used to let me watch Mr. Rogers, but she wouldn't let me watch other TV shows because she said that most TV shows were too, I don't know what she said at the time, but what I remember what she meant, and it was that they were frenetic. And when I watched cartoons and things, just like regular old Bugs Bunny, it got me wound up. And definitely when I was 4, she knew that I was going through trauma at home. She knew. And I was terrified of really silly things like dripping faucets. I was completely like, if a faucet had drips coming out of it, I would go into absolute panic that the whole house was going to fill up with water. Or the other thing is, and we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in San Francisco, there's very steep hills. And sometimes when you're a little kid in the back of a car and a car is going up the hill, you can't see what's on the other side. And it's not until you're totally going down the hill that you can see that it's a hill, it's not a cliff. And I would just absolutely be freaking out in the back seat that we were about to go over a cliff. And when I think about that now, I just feel really sad. I feel really sad that I thought that my parents would ever just like intentionally drive us over a cliff. So yeah, my grandmother knew, and she let me watch Mr. Rogers, and he would start each episode by walking into this fake, it was like a set. It was a TV set, but it was his home, and he would come in the door and he'd say hello, and he would sing the song that he always sang when he was coming in the door. And he would walk over to the closet and he'd open the closet and he would take off his sport coat and he'd put it on a hanger. And then he would take out his sweater. It was like a cardigan sweater that he wore. I think it's in the Smithsonian now. And he'd put that on. He always had like a shirt and tie. He was like a proper 60s dude. Put on his sweater. Then he'd take his a pair of sneakers out, like Keds, out of the closet. And he'd go sit down on the sofa. And he'd take off his leather shoes. And he'd put on his sneakers. And he'd tie them, and he'd sometimes have a little commentary. I'm going to tie my shoe. I'm going to tie that one. I'm going to tie that one. And it was totally mesmerizing. And it would just give me such utter peace inside to watch him do these tasks slowly and carefully. And the camera would give you this close-up view of each shoe while he tied it. So you might learn a little bit about like how to tie a shoe. And he made that show because he knew that a lot of kids were going through trauma. And this is what he did. He hung out with us for half an hour each day. And he says in the documentary, he was trying to like make you feel seen and validated. And he did. It's a great show to watch if you just want to know like how to be with kids too. How do you make a kid feel seen and validated like that? So you may have people who you loved during your own childhood, who you loved exactly because they helped you to learn to move at the right pace for your brain. Like we don't really give thanks for that very often, but there are some people who help you move at the right pace for your brain. And those people are very comforting to be around. And a lot of people use mindfulness meditation to sort of tune in and drop back into their bodies and slowly and mindfully pay attention to what's happening around them. And this is really powerful for CPTSD if you can manage it. And that's something a lot of the leaders in the trauma movement recommend mindfulness meditation, along with some other things. I do a different form of meditation, but even if all you can do is just catch yourself when you're hurrying and go, whoa, I'm hurrying, I'm feeling really stressed right now, I'm getting overwhelmed, and then drop down just temporarily to half speed. Like you might only need to go at half speed to just finish getting something out of the drawer and shutting the drawer. But just doing it slowly so you're not just banging around and clanking your hands into things. Just slowing it down to half speed, it can sort of send a signal back to your brain to re-regulate, get you out of that dysregulation and back into a regulated state. So if you can learn to do this around hurrying or anything that gets you dysregulated and frustrated, if you can change your dysregulation, you can change the course of your whole life. It's the dysregulation that's at the root of so many childhood PTSD symptoms, including the health problems, including the cognitive problems, including a huge array of health problems. learning to re-regulate is the number one thing you can do to start healing all these other aspects of your trauma. When I ask people I coach, what is the biggest, most hard to manage trigger of your childhood PTSD? Most of them say abandonment. And this trigger is so strong and so totally takes over your nervous system and your perception that if you're like a lot of people who were neglected or abandoned as kids, you can't even tell when you're imagining that someone's going to leave you or if your awareness is really pretty accurate and you are seeing what's about to happen. All CPTSD triggers lead to some level of dysregulation of your emotions, your brain, your whole nervous system. And in my experience, healing is virtually impossible until you can learn to get re-regulated. So today I want to share with you a video about getting triggered by abandonment. And this is one of the videos from my Dysregulation Bootcamp, which is a 20-day course that helps you calm your CPTSD triggers so that you can get mastery over your emotions, your thinking, and your physiology so that you can live your life more in harmony with yourself, more regulated, more of the time. It's so powerful when you learn to re-regulate. If you're interested in the Dysregulation Bootcamp, there's a link below. You'll hear me in this video refer to a worksheet, but that's only available in the course itself. That's okay. I'm sharing this because I tell a story here of how triggers can get that power over you. And if you live with a vulnerability around feeling abandoned, my story could just give you some hope. I hope so. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most intense triggers for childhood PTSD, abandonment. This one is so primal because we're all wired to be loved and included in the tribe as if our lives depend on it. Because in any situation before the last, 100 years or so, our lives did depend on it. We need our parents when we're born, and we need dependable people connected to us throughout our lives. So just about everyone, and I know this because I've taught so many people to write their fears each day, and I've heard the things that come up for everyone. Being left by the tribe is a core fear. It comes out as fear of ending up alone and homeless and dying alone. And the fear isn't irrational, really. It's a standard feature of being a Homo sapien. But for those of us with childhood PTSD, it can go way out of proportion to the situation, to the point of being crippling, and it can make us seem really unreasonable. In my childhood, my mother would leave the family for a month at a time, starting when I was a month old. She'd run off with some guy and not tell anyone where she was or if she was coming back. Now, she did come back, but the family would be in anguish and frantic with uncertainty, and this was going on all around me while I was a small kid. And then when I was about 5, she'd sometimes take me with her and leave me for a moment in a lobby or for a couple of hours in a movie theater. And then she would not come back for 10, 11 hours. And the police picked me up once outside a casino. That's when I was 6. I hadn't eaten all day. I had a fever. Now, nowadays, you'd lose your kids over something like that, but not back then. And I was scrambling to cover for her because, of course, I didn't want them to take me away from her. But you can see where I got kind of a weird thing around abandonment, and that carried into my adulthood. And it certainly kicked up when I started having groups of friends, then boyfriends, and then working and trying to fit in. All situations where sometimes there's rejection. And before I learned to stay regulated, any rejection, I'll tell you what it felt like. It was as if I'd been injected with a toxic chemical. I'm assuming it was a release of some stress hormone, and I could feel that bad feeling just like flowing through my bloodstream. And I'd think, oh no, here it goes again. And I'd fall into a very dark kind of dysregulation, and there would be nothing I could do to stop it. That's a trigger. So you'll be tempted on the worksheet to put a lot of work into understanding why you have certain triggers like this one, just like I told you why. And knowing this, that's possibly helpful. Maybe you'll better understand that your reactions to abandonment are not your fault. You didn't just make it up. But I'm going to direct the majority of your focus to just remembering and noticing what it feels like when you're triggered by abandonment. What in your adult life recently has set it off? And what was it about those situations that seems to get to you so badly? So that's all in the worksheet, along with reflection on how you've come back from abandonment.
Totally important, right? One thing that's going to help you tremendously with dislodging those deep-rooted triggers that have an early and understandable origin is the daily practice. When you write your fears and resentments, you can pour out whatever is coming up on a hard day when your fear of abandonment got triggered. Fear, no one likes me. Fear, I don't know what just happened. Fear, I'll end up alone when I'm old. And I'm resentful at my girlfriend because I have fear she didn't text me back last night, and so on. Deep triggers aren't going to change because you merely decide to change. It's not likely anyway. They change when you can access that pre-language part of your brain where the abandonment hurt was installed. And language out through writing, not speaking, writing what that feeling is that's happening, the terror, the self-hatred, whatever it is for you. You write it, you meditate, and you'll find that the emotions are calmer and they're lying low for the time being. And your thinking is clearer. Like maybe you don't have to freak out and act jealous this time. Maybe you can forget about it. Or maybe you're sick of all the fear involved in a relationship and you want to end it. There's no right answer here. The point is that all options are open to you and you're no longer enslaved by a fear of that physiological hell associated with abandonment that limits so many of us with childhood PTSD.
Some people who were heavily criticized or bullied when they were small create a coping mechanism of suppressing themselves. And the idea is, if you can stay off the radar screen of the person who tyrannizes you, you don't challenge them, don't try hard to accomplish anything, don't attract attention, don't admit mistakes, you'll be safe. And maybe that was true in childhood, but if this goes on into adulthood, it can turn into a really hard pattern of avoidance. Avoidance of connection with people, of accomplishment, of meeting your own material needs, and of pursuing a life that makes you happy. Now, avoidance makes your life small and lonely. It can make it feel like some force outside yourself is making it impossible to change. And believing this can make people not only feel helpless, but sour and angry. Do you know people like this? That defensive anger is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're so sure that they won't be understood or accepted, they kind of lead with criticism and blame. We all have this a little bit. Hiding, criticizing, blaming other people as a way to keep our fears at bay, that we don't belong, that we're not good enough, that no one likes us. And that resentful martyr energy really does push people away. Despite anything else that might be good about you, it can ruin relationships and the possibilities of your life. So it's good to notice it, to take stock from time to time and see if unconsciously you're actually blocking yourself from the life you want. So I've made a list of more than 40 signs that you might be acting out on an old, unhealthy pattern of keeping your life small that's sabotaging you being happy. So let's start with material self-suppression, because that's what I'm calling it, suppressing yourself. Number one, you confuse living simply with actually what's self-neglect. Maybe expressing resentment at people who have decent things, an okay house, clean clothes, good healthy food, and imagining that not having these things puts you on a higher moral plane, like you're just not so materialist or something. Number two, your living space is cluttered and dirty. Yeah, that is a way to self-suppress. When your space isn't clear, you don't have space to invite people, to dream, to have orderly thoughts. For people with CPTSD, having clutter in your space can increase dysregulation. Number three is you don't exercise, even though we all know what a strong medicine it is for depression, for dysregulation, for anxiety, for your health in general. Not exercising is a way of suppressing yourself, because if you did, you would begin to bloom. That's what happens. Number four, you go to bed day after day feeling guilty about what you ate that day. So what that points to is that you have a chronic pattern of eating in a way that you don't want to eat. And, a lot of people do this. I do it sometimes. But it's this terrible feeling going to bed at night and thinking only about what I ate and beating myself up over it is definitely making myself small. The best thoughts I can have are clear, free, happy thoughts that empower me to eat the way that I intend to eat the next day. Number 5, you're waiting until you're a different weight before you buy decent clothes. Do you have that? Do you have like multiple sizes all over the closet and in the drawers? And then you don't have anything nice because any day now you're going to change the way you eat and not feel guilty at night. That whole thing. That is self-suppression. You can go ahead and have decent clothes at the weight you are right now. Number 6, your car is full of litter. If you drive a car and it's full of litter, this is kind of like the equivalent of having a messy house. And it communicates to other people that you maybe don't have your thoughts in order. And I bet you're avoiding giving people rides places. Free up your life. Clean out your car. Make it decent. Wipe down the dashboard. Number 7, your desk is cluttered. Same thing as the car or the house, but your desk is where you sit down. If you're like me, I work at a desk, and I intentionally have a desk that's really smaller than I would like it to be, because if you give me extra feet at the end of the desk, I'll pile it up with papers. I've always got like a ton of papers and a lot of stuff going on, and every morning I get up, I make my bed, and then I tidy up my desk. And I guess I could do it the night before, but I'm too tired at that point. I get up in the morning and I tidy my desk, and I have these shelves where I put things like, this is something I'm not dealing with today, but I'm dealing with it tomorrow. And I have these really cool, like colored plastic pocket folders that I put them in, and by project, and they're see-through so I can see what they are. So that way I can have, 20 projects going, but not on my desk. Number 8, you don't buy yourself clothes that look good on you. That part of that goes back to what I said about feeling like, oh, there's this future weight that you're going to have. You will look a certain way in the future and then you can have the clothes. But actually you deserve to buy clothes that look good on you right now. And I know hardly anybody has money for all the clothes they would ever want. But even if you go to thrift shops, I love thrift shops, you get to pick out the clothes that look good on you. Number 9, your bras and underwear are tattered, stained, frayed, falling apart. This is a way that you communicate to yourself that you're not worth it. And again, I know they cost money, but you can go to some place like Target, and it's really not that much to have decent, proper, newish underwear and bras. And what about another form of self-suppression, romantic self-suppression? This is another way that you might be playing small. All right? There's someone in your life who mistreats you, and you've said nothing because conflict for you is unbearable. At a certain point in your healing, you're going to need to say something. And yes, the whole thing could fall apart if you're honest. But I always say, if being truthful causes a relationship to fall apart, it was never real in the first place. All right, the next one, you love someone in your life, but you don't tell them. Now, I realize that a lot of people watching this channel, it might be limerence. You can't tell them because it will freak them out, because you either know flat out or you suspect that if they knew how strong your feelings were, they would avoid you. They would, put up a boundary and not want to deal with you. That's possible. But you know what? Even if that happened, mightn't it not be for the best? Now, if that other person has a partner, I would say don't say anything, clear on out. But sometimes expressing how you really feel is a good way to let the chips fall where they may. Let your life move forward. Let the story go where it's trying to go. Either the whole thing falls apart because of who you are, or who knows, maybe it's meant to be and you come together. But when you hide how you feel about things, you prevent the story. You get it stuck in mud. And that is an empty mud. Nothing good happens there where you're not honest about where you're coming from. All right, the next one, the person you love doesn't love you back, but you hang out with them. That is a way to play small. That is a way to take all your potential to be in love, to be loved back, and take it and just invest it in this black hole where nothing comes back out. Okay, here's one. You date someone for years, but you don't commit. Maybe they want you to commit, but you can't. You kind of want to keep it in limbo forever. Now, is limbo really the best for anybody here? If the relationship is not good enough to commit, maybe is it right to let it go and open up your life to something new that is really fabulous, that you really do want? Something to ask yourself. All right, another one, you have a partner who loves you, but you're not faithful to them. You've got something going on in secret. You can't be straight with them about how you really feel. You're tying up all their emotional energy so that you can, I don't know, have a safe haven to go to. That keeps your life small. No good thing comes to people who are dishonest like that. All right, similarly, you're in a relationship you know can't last, but you don't leave. Another way to tie up all your emotional energy and make sure nothing wonderful happens. And finally, on the relationship front, this is a way to keep your life small. You really want a relationship, but you don't do anything about it, right? This is really common for people with CPTSD, like trying to meet somebody, putting yourself out there is very triggering. Creates the possibility that you'll get rejected, that you'll feel terrible, that you'll go through abandonment melange. Abandonment melange is a very painful emotional state that can happen to people who were abandoned as kids. That's this very intense combination of grief and anxiety and rage. And it comes down upon you and feels like your life is over because somebody doesn't like you. But when you have a name for that phenomenon, you can handle that phenomenon. It's abandonment melange, and it's a emotional wave that comes over people who have that history of abandonment, but guess what? Then it passes right on by when you know what it is. You can afford to put yourself out there. You can afford to express that you like somebody and they don't like you back. But to do that, it's really important to be able to strengthen your ability to handle big emotions. I'm going to talk about that at the end. All right, here's another one. You wish you had friends, but you say publicly that people are terrible these days, and you insist they're not worth the trouble. I see so much of this in the YouTube comments, and I think a lot of these, I'm actually responding to things I see in the YouTube comments. A lot of pessimism, just pessimism about people. People suck, men suck, women suck. All women want is money. All men want is sex. All this is trauma-driven thinking. And I just encourage you, do not commit to these thoughts. Have an open mind. Obviously, there are great people out there. And obviously, love does occur. If you want to have friends, if you hope to ever meet a partner, then the cynicism needs to be addressed and healed. It needs to get out of the way so that you can have an open enough mind to go out there and have some adventures, take some risks. All right, here's one. You never have people over. Maybe you go to their house sometimes, but you never have people over. That's a sign you're playing small. One is you complain and gossip about a friend, but you don't talk to the friend about what's bothering you. So that's a way that you vent without actually solving the rift in the relationship that's keeping you not only like disconnected from them, but causing harm to their reputation. All right. It's your friend's birthday, but you don't send a note. And here's the thing about Facebook is if you're on Facebook, you can know people's birthdays and it'll come up every day that it's happening. And I sometimes talk about this man, my friend, when I was growing up, she died when we were 26 and I stayed friends with her mother. And her mother, one of her big regrets is that she stayed with my friend's father for so many years. And after he died, when she was 80, she got together with a longtime friend who was also widowed, and they had the most wonderful romance of their lives. And the guy, his name was Dick, and he said what he did was he kept a Rolodex, because that's what people their age do, is keep a Rolodex. And he kept track of everybody's birthday. He kept track of the big events, like if they had been in the hospital or they had a child or maybe a loved one died. And he kept track of all that. And every day he'd go on his date Rolodex and he'd see who do I need to reach out to. And he'd call them or send an email or a card. What a lovely guy. And you know what? He had oodles of friends. He had a lot of joy, a big warm heart. And really, no matter what you've been through, you can be like him. So my friend who married him as her second marriage, she said that her 80s were absolutely the happiest decade of her life. And she only wishes that she had found him before. And it really opened her heart to be around somebody who was so loving to people in general. He was a nice guy. I got to meet him too. Okay, here's one. You're walking down the street. There's not a lot of people around. You pass somebody and you look down. Do you do that? That is a small thing to do. It is so much more joyful, and it makes life better for you and for the person you pass to just say hello, give them a little nod. You don't have to get into a big conversation about it, because I know that's what you're worried about. The next one, before you leave your house, you look around out the window to make sure that no neighbors around, because also you don't want to talk to them. And I know, I have some neighbors who are very, very talkative, and the minute you let them in, you give them an inch and just say, hey, how's it going? Oh yeah, it was raining. This whole conversation erupts. So this is about having boundaries. If you don't want to have a deep conversation when you say hello to people, you practice your exit lines. You go, I'm so glad to see you. I have to go right now, but take care. I'll see you next time. And you say that and you make your exit. And now it's safe for you to say hello to the neighbors. You might be making a tremendous difference in their lives just by connecting with them. And I know it's good for you. All right, here's one. You have people you love, but you don't call them, right? Same sort of principle. Or when your phone rings and it's someone you know, you don't answer. It would be a big conversation. I can't deal with it. If you have boundaries, you can call your friends and you can pick up the phone when they call. Here's one. When a dog comes over and wags its tail, pet the dog. Don't ignore it. Ignoring the dog, ignoring love when it just shows up like a little loving creature shows up in your path. Take the love. Just give them a little pat on the head and say hello. Okay, here's another category of self-suppression. You don't participate when participation is called for. For example, right, when you join a group, it gets uncomfortable for you. And not only do you leave, but then you tell everybody how crappy the group is and criticize them. Have you done that? Like burning your bridges on those people. If you really don't feel right in a group or in a friendship, it's okay to leave. It's okay to set boundaries and go. But whenever possible, don't burn your bridges. Don't talk bad about those people. I mean, basically, don't talk bad about anyone. It's just not a good idea. It's not necessary. You know that old rule, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Before you say something about people. All right. When you go to a potluck dinner, you bring something cheap or you bring nothing, right? And then you don't lend a hand with cleanup. That's a way that you don't participate. Talk about not participating. As a person who hosts a lot of potlucks, I know exactly who it is who brings like a protein, who brings a salad, and who brings a 6-pack of cheap soda and dumps it on the table, I don't mind. I tell everybody, you don't have to bring anything, but I love the people who participate, and the people who, bring something that's nice to eat, and the people who help me clean up will always get invited back again. All right, here's another one. You go to 12-step meetings, but you don't work the steps. A lot of people do that. 12-step meetings, any particular meeting you go to is really only as good as the proportion of people who have some recovery there, and recovery comes through working the steps. And, this is just a little talk about 12-step life. And I know you're watching this, it might not be your thing, but it applies to a lot of situations you go to. I've been to meetings where almost nobody was working the program. They were just going there talking about how terrible everything is in their life. And you know what? It's depressing. It's depressing. There's room for new people to talk about what's bothering them when there's a lot of other people who are talking about the solution. So if you're trying to recover, but all you're doing is going in and saying how terrible everything is, I have news for you. Saying how terrible everything is not really going to solve anything. We all have to recognize it at some point that maybe things aren't going well, and maybe you tell somebody because you're asking for help, like in a group or to a therapist or a friend or a sponsor. But talking about your problems and how unhappy you are at a certain point makes you more unhappy. And not only that, it brings down other people. And you would be wise, if you do want to feel happier, go to where people are talking about their solutions, how they made things better. Listen to them, match them. Start using your time, for example, in a 12-step meeting when it's your turn to share. Say what the problem is, but then talk about the tools you use to make it better. Talk about the solution. There's people in the room who need to hear it. Even people who have been there longer than you, they need to hear that. They need to hear, what do I do? But what do I do? But what helps? Talk about what helps. I know you've done things that help. And every day, if you're working on healing, and this is true also like in my membership program, if people are working my program of healing, they're going to have little victories. And those little victories are medicine for everybody in the community. You can do that in the comments in YouTube too. Share your successes. All right, there's this other form of self-suppression around accomplishment. And you might think it keeps you safe from criticism and rejection, but it doesn't work. So here's how you can tell if you're, suppressing yourself around accomplishment. You have stories that you tell to prove to other people how unfair life is, that you tried, but the world wouldn't let you succeed. And I'm telling you this because this is a huge go-to that I used to have. I just would feel really discouraged. It was building up because I have a daily practice technique now that I use to get my fearful and resentful thoughts out. And there's a lot of times in my life where I felt like the deck was stacked against me. My boss, my former partners, friends, I felt like they wanted me to fail. They were undermining me. They were trying to make things harder for me. And I would talk about it to a lot of people. And then, I would come to my senses and go, what have I done? Now I've made everybody hate this person, or I'm looking like somebody who's got these terrible problems, and I'm actually not going to do anything about them, because actually what was going on is I was having a lot of fear and resentment. I haven't actually made a decision to leave. But what I teach when I'm teaching people how to recover from trauma is to take back their sovereignty. That means not only do other people dictate how you heal or what you need, but it means you've got to take responsibility if something's really terrible for you, that it's for you to change, that other people, there is no knight in shining armor who's going to come along and save you from your job or save you from your terrible group of friends. That if it's really so bad, instead of talking to people about it or complaining, it's time to make a change. And I know change is hard. I know. All right, here's another one. You hate your job and you want to be promoted, but you can't because you don't have the skills, and yet you don't go learn the skills. This is really, really common. It surprised me. I didn't learn this till I was in my 40s. How much mobility was there for me if I would actually do that. I used to really externalize responsibility for me getting anywhere at work, and I was always very unhappy about it. And I would say that I tended to be underemployed and underutilized. I think I had a lot of potential when I was younger, but because of the drama from the, problems in my life and the trauma, and then my own self-suppression, instead of asking for a raise, I would just be resentful for 2 years that I didn't get one, And there's a lot of power in asking for a raise. If they don't give you one, you can still stay and you've lost nothing, or you can take that as information and you can go do something else. And I know there's going to be a ton of people in the comments going, blah, blah, capitalism. And you know what? That's just more self-suppression. You really are literally not in a position to change the economic system where you live. You are in a position to change your actions, to move yourself somewhere where you might better like to be. And I thought that I couldn't raise my income for years. I really felt suppressed by this. And then I had a kid, and the kid's dad left me, and I had to raise my income. And so many single parents have been in this situation. And I had to think real quick about how I was going to do that. And it turned out that once it was absolutely necessary, I did what was necessary. I made huge changes in my life, and I learned some skills. I changed my appearance. I started showing up on time. I started showing up with an attitude that would help me earn more money. And it was, I just laid it on the line, and then I asked for the raise. My boss complained, but I got the raise. That's what happened. So I just am urging you, don't predict that the world is unfair. That's what I'm talking about, that sort of projection. I never get what I want. It's always unfair. A lot of things are unfair. You haven't gotten a lot of things, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't just take the logical action to move toward what you want. And that's what this video is about ways you block yourself from getting what you want. Cynicism, pessimism, giving up, blaming other people, all that stuff. We all do it a little bit, but at a certain point, it's important to shift gears and figure out what can I change here? Because it's not going to change unless I change it. one thing that I can guarantee is going to hobble your ability to make a positive change in your life is if you're looking at screens during every free hour, looking at your phone, looking at your computer, looking at streaming, whatever it is, games. The time doing that is time taken away from your potential to make a positive shift in your life. Screens are nice for relaxation. They're necessary for work for a lot of us, but they should not fill up all your hours. Personal development. Okay, personal development could be happening on screens. You're on a screen right now to watch this video. It's important to use your time well to move your life forward into how you want it to change. All right, here's one. The knowledge you need is available for free online, but you don't spend time to learn it. So many of you have heard the story, but in 2008, 2009, when the market crashed, and I was a consultant at the time, and everybody who used to hire me got laid off their jobs, and therefore I didn't have a job. I trained myself how to make video, and I had learned it long ago before it was digital. I didn't really know how to edit video in the digital world. And so I Googled it. I started a video company, and I taught myself to edit. And I hired somebody to do the camera work, and together we cobbled together a little company that ended up growing into many people that flourished until Crappy Childhood Fairy took off, and I let that business go and handed it off to one of my colleagues, and now I do this. But my experience editing video has always been such a feather in my cap. I have, you'll never be sorry you know how to edit a video, especially if you do what I do. All right, here's one. You live buried in debt. And because of the debt, you can't make changes. So a friend of mine said this to me in my 20s and said, I think I know why people go into debt. They do it so that they don't have any choices. And I thought, that's preposterous. I was in debt at the time. I was in debt because I couldn't pay it off. But the thing is, back in my day, they didn't give you a credit card the minute you were born. I think I was like 29 or something when I finally got a credit card, and I lived all that time. I had some student debt. I paid it off. I got this credit card with a $400 limit, and then it was always at a $400 limit. Like, I made this mental adjustment. And so always in my mind, it's like, well, I'd really like to take this trip, but I can't till I pay off my credit card. And it's kind of like what I said about clothes. I'd really like to have decent clothes, but I can't until I lose 20 pounds. It's the same thing. It's like putting into the future. It's taking yourself and distancing yourself from the future. So either whether it's clothes or debt, either you accept things the way they are and go ahead and be happy anyway, or you solve the problem so that you can follow through on this plan you have to pay off the debt and then take the trip. But holding that debt right there, it's always like this little bookmark or a doorstop. You just can't open the door. You can't go where you're trying to go. All right, here's one. You don't get medical checkups, and you don't get your teeth cleaned regularly. That's a big one. I'm always trying to encourage people with CPTSD that that's a concrete form of self-neglect that can cause real problems. And then I want to talk about this last category, and I was trying to think of what to call it, but let's call it suppression of joy and growth. So here's one that I relate to, and it's your living space has nothing beautiful. There's no art, or you have a yard or a porch or a balcony, but you don't have any plants on it. All right. Having a beautiful space is a way that you commit to your life, that you commit to having the life that you love. Now, if you really don't care about art or flowers or anything like that, okay, fine. I bet you have your equivalent thing about making your space nice and treating yourself like a proper adult who has proper things, proper furniture, proper silverware, proper bras and underwear, right? But to allow yourself to really blossom as a person who has what you need. All right. Here's one. You'd like to have a pet, but you don't get a pet. And I think I'm throwing that in because I really want a dog. And I'm not getting a dog right now because I travel so much to do live shows. And I haven't figured that out yet, but I really want a pet. And I think that having a dog again in my life is going to be a really happy thing. And I'm having to delay happiness on that. But it's worth it because I get to travel and see you. Here's one. You feel vaguely resentful around people who are happy or accomplished. Now, this is something we talked about in a video not that long ago. What is it about people who aren't screwed up or traumatized that makes us so uncomfortable around them? And as one person pointed out, and I think this is right, it's shame, right? Shame comes up around people who are okay, and we begin to compare ourselves to them, even though they're probably not comparing themselves to us. We're doing it for them and then pulling away from them. So we end up with like envy, resentment, avoidance around people who have fun, opportunities, joy to bring into our lives, great people. And that's one of my regrets, is some of the wonderful people I've crossed paths with who I allowed that friendship to just slip away because I don't know, I felt resentful or envious of how successful they were or how beautiful or how kind. So do you recognize any of these forms of self-suppression in yourself? The solution is to begin expressing who you are. And I understand quite well how that can be tricky when you grow up with abuse and neglect, because you might have a prickly side, you might have a difficult side, you might have a little bit of issue with emotional dysregulation where you lash out when stuff gets stressful. People trigger you. So when people say, hey, just be your true self, I know as few others can understand, how risky it is to just be yourself. So becoming yourself is a two-part thing. It's not just letting your true personality and thoughts hang out. It's not just that. Your true self also has all kinds of values, consideration, restraint at times, thoughtfulness, strategic behavior. Like that's part of you too. And they need to come up together where you think to yourself, do I need to mouth off to this other driver right now? Is that necessary to be my real self? Or is my real self also somebody who can be patient about somebody who cut me off in traffic, who can hold my tongue, who can go use my tools to go release that stress before it gets all stuck inside me and turns me into an angry, serrated knife, as my meditation teacher used to call me, a serrated knife. So I don't want to be that person. My real self is not that. That layer, that angry layer, was a byproduct of my trauma. And I'm healing that, and you can too. So the solution isn't just running around screaming at people about whatever we feel or things like that. The solution is self-awareness, right? The solution is self-expression, balanced, self-awareness, self-expression. So people with CPTSD, when you ask what they really want in life, quite often they can't tell you. The question brings up grief and anxiety, like, I don't know, I'll never get it anyway. But it's good to know what you want. It's good to write it down. And discovering that can be a process. A lot of people who come into my programs, I go, write down your wildest dreams of what you really want. And a lot of people will whisper to each other, is it just me? I can't even articulate it. Give it a little time. Start writing down what you know about it. Let it be vague at first. You express yourself with who you are, how you present yourself, what you say, and what you become in life. And that's what healing looks like. And as you heal, you do that a little bit. And trust me, you're going to just get all effed up in your head. Like, why did I say that? I shouldn't have. I just blurted out something. And now everybody thinks I'm an idiot. This is part of healing. This is part of it. So gradual, incremental experimentation, it always involves some fumbling, all right? It always involves some failure. And if you've lived your life in fear of criticism, because that's how it all started for you, you're going to need support. You're going to need perseverance to just keep going one foot in front of the other, becoming your real self, expressing yourself. So this is what you would have been doing as a child if you would have been free to be yourself and supported to learn how to be yourself. Now, maybe there's a little developmental delay there, but now is your time. You're going to need tools. You're going to need books, videos, courses to guide you. You're using a tool right now watching this video, so that's great. You'll need support from actual people, maybe friends you already know or friends that you meet because they're in little pockets where people work on themselves, maybe in a 12-step fellowship or a support group, maybe in my membership program. If you're already in that or you're interested in it, check it out. If you're a self-suppressor, it's like I'm telling you something horrible. You're going to have to deal with people. That's impossible, you're thinking. But it's actually quite nice if you can go slowly. And it's necessary because if you're left to your own device, honestly, you're very likely to fall back into self-suppression, justifying that suppression, and playing small. So if you want a really gentle way to get started to try to handle the feelings that come up when you expand your comfort zone like that, you can try my daily practice techniques. That's why I'm always talking about them. They really help with that. It's kind of like opening a window on a room that's gotten stuffy and steamy with cruddy thoughts and feelings. It lets fresh air in. It lets the bad stuff out. And sometimes It makes a space for a happy thought to come in that leads you to your next step. You have an idea, an inspiration. I know what I can do next. I was doing some research recently, and I was shocked to learn that a tendency towards romantic obsession and limerence might be genetic or have a genetic component. Maybe, but based on all the hundreds of letters I get, the background stories about abuse and neglect in childhood, and particularly the presence of an alcoholic parent, like the pattern is so similar that I'd have to say that my theory is that there's a certain type of trauma that produces limerence and obsession. There's a connection between that sort of childhood with super neglectful parenting, where a child had to dance around for every bit of love they got, and a difficulty later forming loving, mutually committed relationships with people who are emotionally available. Limerence is the word for a sort of romantic obsession that's more like an addiction. It thrives when you can't have the person. It involves a lot of thinking about them and maybe stalking their media, trying to see, are they giving you a sign they feel the same way? But limerence can't really keep going unless it's a little bit out of reach, unless there's a strange mix of unobtainableness and hope, just a little bit of hope. And if you find yourself thinking about, like, how could I tip my hand about how I feel about this person without actually tipping my hand about it? That's limerence. You don't want everything to come to light, because if it ends, then you've lost your source of energy and hope. That's what limerence is. It's an addiction to a strange kind of hope of something that you can't really have. The thing about obsession and limerence is that they thrive when you're in a bad place, when your needs aren't met, when you're isolated or grieving or chronically stressed. This is when, if you have a propensity to get limerent and obsessed, this is when it comes and gets you and can consume your life. So my letter today is from a woman I'll call Daniela, and she writes, "Dear Anna, thank you so much for your videos. I'm 24 years old, an entrepreneur and performer, and still discovering myself in this world. Last year, a tragic situation happened in my country, the war. I'm from Ukraine, and at the beginning of the war, I had to flee the country and stay at my friends in Berlin. I was lost and emotionally torn apart from the atrocities in my country. On top of that, I only started emotionally processing the death of my father I lost less than a year ago. I was going through a lot of things at the time, and I felt very old and uninspired, and nothing made me happy, and the everyday reality checks through the news were burying the last leftovers of my bubbly personality. I was devastated. Until I met one guy through Tinder, and his name was Hugo, and we casually met at the park one day. We liked each other and had a connection, followed by a kiss. We were both funny, witty, passionate. One date followed another, plus everyday chatting made me feel excited for the first time in a while. I felt alive. I liked him. He seemed to be interested in me too, although when we were planning our third date, his frequent online availability surprisingly disappeared. He even highlighted it by text one day with, "I am sorry, I'm bad at texting." And I was confused to hear that, because over 2 weeks of knowing and texting each other, he never gave me an impression of the person who was bad at texting up until that moment. The worst thing that could have happened. When I felt like he was slipping through my hands, I immediately started chasing him. Over the next weeks, I was simply raving about him, fixating on memories I'd created with him, and constantly fantasizing about our next dates that came to fruition largely due to my feisty nature and his over-politeness and protrudent sense of guilt. Protrudent. He didn't want to meet with me. I know it. He answered my text messages rarely and even canceled one of the dates because his friends were in town. I know these are real signs that a person doesn't want to hang out with you, but I was so blinded by this obsession, I wasn't behaving adequately. I simply couldn't help it, couldn't control myself. The real-life events I had to face were too unfair and cruel for me to handle, and now I understand that I had limerence for Hugo as a way to escape from all the news, the war, the death of my father, and new life in a new country. I just wished instead of spending all that time obsessing over that guy who was a bit dishonest with me. One time I told him that I like him and want to keep hanging out with him, and his response was something along the lines of, I want to see you again, and I would have texted you and invited you out next week because this week is busy. Well, guess what? Next week he texted me and invited me out, but then canceled it last minute because his friends were in town. I was journaling, meditating, trying to find peace and happiness within myself. I do feel like I stole time from myself and gave my energy and affection to the wrong person who didn't deserve it. I feel like I'm in the last stage of accepting this situation as a lesson to learn from, but I can't help but feel sad for the time I've wasted. Is it okay to feel like that? How do I move on from the situation once and for all? Thank you. Okay, Daniela, I just have so much feeling for you. So first of all, anything that happens weird in your life right now, after all that you've been through, having to flee as a refugee from Ukraine, and the loss of your dad, and you didn't mention this, but presumably you don't get to have all your loved ones in your life right now. They're not with you in Berlin, I presume. Friends, family, whoever it is that were your support people there. How hard would that be? It's one thing to move to another country, a new language and everything, to do that. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. You're 24. It's an age where sometimes people do that for happy reasons, but you're doing that for the least happy reasons. So you basically had to flee to this other country. And I'm not surprised that with the news and the bleakness and the way that nothing makes sense, and, COVID happened, so much has been going on, you got depressed. So when you say you felt old and uninspired and nothing made you happy, and the everyday reality checks with news were burying the last leftovers of your bubbly personality, you were devastated. You bet. That's totally normal. I just totally grant you space to have your feelings about that and to feel depressed about it. It's depressing. I'm impressed and proud of you that you went on a date. And here's what happens. If you had childhood trauma, like you didn't talk about what happened in the past, but you watch my channel, and actually living through a war as you have, even if you didn't have trauma as a child, you can develop complex PTSD as a result of chronic, intense, ongoing stress, right? I'm just going to assume you have CPTSD. And so a date can feel like the greatest bright spot you ever had. And I don't blame you at all for investing a lot of emotional energy into it because you liked him. I mean, how often does that happen, right? That you meet somebody that you really like. And I can imagine that you could suddenly see like life could be better. You could have this person close to you. You could be loved. Maybe it would lead to more. Maybe you could stay and, never have to go back to this war. And I feel you on this. Perhaps what happened is limerence, but this is such a good example of the way limerence can get in when everything else is terrible. You must have been feeling really alone. So you had 2 dates and everything was going really well and you were excited for the first time and you felt alive. And that's what it is to have a crush on somebody, to fall for somebody. It makes you feel alive. When it switches into limerence, where you're having this, I gotta make it work no matter what, even when you feel somebody pulling away, even when they have pulled away and you can't stop thinking about them, that's also your quest to feel alive. So I want you to respect that part of yourself. It needs to live in color. It needs to be alive. And, you're dented and bruised and hurt and you have so much loss that's happened and so much anxiety about the future, I should think, right? With what's happening. Like as I record this video, the war is ongoing and nobody knows what's going to happen. And it doesn't sound very good no matter what. So when you were planning your 3rd date, you started feeling him pulling away. And he texted you and said, sorry, I'm bad at texting. And then he said he would talk to you next week, and you probably counted the days. And then he said, well, his friends were in town. So this is what I want to tell you. Something happened that may have had nothing to do with you that made him like you and then go, I don't think I want to do this, or I'm not sure. It sounds like he wasn't sure and he was trying to pause. He was trying to pause and not pursue it. But most people, if they have a heart, they don't want to hurt anybody. And I think that men are particularly like this, where they will, instead of telling you, look, I realized I don't have that feeling for you, which ultimately is why anybody breaks up with another person or stops seeing them. It's just they're not feeling it, right? It may not have anything to do with you, but they just don't feel it. It doesn't happen very often. For one person to feel it is a miracle. For two people, it's like lightning striking twice, you know? It's a big deal if both people feel it at the same time. And so as you're dating Daniela, you're gonna, you know, they call this kissing frogs. I don't think he's a frog. I think he was trying not to hurt you. He lost interest and he didn't want to hurt you. And you feel embarrassed because you kind of pressured him to have 2 more dates with you. And I wouldn't be surprised, you know, I'm reading into it, but he probably, you know, he had empathy for you. He knew you had been through a lot. He didn't want you to be hurt. But he realized by trying to date you, like, there was no way that he could not hurt you, and he needed to just stop. So that's what happened. When you say he wasn't very honest, I think that that's where he was coming from. He didn't want to hurt you. And I don't think that that's the same as somebody like getting in there negatively trying to manipulate you. Now, I don't know him. I don't know exactly what happened. But in a way, I just want to reassure you, he was an okay guy. You did well. The person you liked was a good guy, but it just wasn't reciprocated. And what happens with limerence, or in your case, you know, when there's been a whole lot of crisis, and no matter what, like while this crisis is going on for you, while you're not healed from the past, and why would you be? It hasn't been that long. While you're going through that, it creates kind of a pressure, you know, like a tornado could form there. And it's a lot for somebody to take on. Like, it has to be a really amazingly special relationship, you know, to overcome the fact that one person is in a whole bunch of trauma right now. And so the best thing you can do is to not be dating right now, to keep healing or date lightly, and to, you know what you might want to do, Daniela, is take my dating course, because it helps you make really good use of it. Your fear is that you've wasted your time. You have not wasted your time. You're living life. You're having a life experience of like loving and losing. You know that saying? It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And to date somebody a few times and, you know, have it not work out, you will be able to heal through this. You will be able to heal through this. What's making it so hard is that huge deficit in your life of security and love and people around you. So those are your goals right now. You need security, you need the love of friends, and you need people around you. And security is financial, and security is just knowing that if you're having a really tough emotional time, there's a space for you, there's people you can go to, and you'll get what you need. And so when you have more of that, you want to have tools. You want to have tools. So this is why I brought up the dating course. When a relationship has ended, it's this perfect, magical time where your awareness is really great. You know, when you're in a relationship, it's sort of like it puts you to sleep a little bit. When your heart is broken, you can feel it, you can think again. And this is a really good time to learn how to do something new in your romantic life. So that's why I suggest to you my dating course, because it teaches you to get very clear about what you want. And what you want is presumably somebody who's just as into you as you are into them. So when somebody's not into you, they actually they're not a good person for you. And so we end up focusing like, why couldn't I have them? But the fact is, they can only be a good person if they are into you. So it's kind of hard to see it when you're heartbroken, but he was no good for you. He didn't have that to offer. Of course you need that, and you deserve it, and you shall have it too one day. You just need to keep healing what you've been through. I don't know if you're going to stay in Berlin. This is going to be a time of change and adventure and uncertainty. And I encourage you strongly to find tools for healing that suit you, whether that's a 12-step group, a therapist, the program, my membership program, and the dating course, the coaching. These are all places where you can go to get tools to change your life for the better, to start working on that trauma wound. And then to find, and this is a very important thing, to find other women who are walking that healing path with you, who you can be friends with, who you can hang out with on Saturday night, who you can call when you're feeling torn up about what happened, or you're feeling like you're going to text him again and give it one more go to try to convince him. I know you don't want to do that. I know you know that ship has sailed. So you don't want to do that. And sometimes you need a friend to kind of sit with you and cheer you up and take you to the movies or for something nice to eat to help you ride it out and ride out that sad feeling. And the best kind of friend, I think, are the ones who use the daily practice, the writing fears and resentments and releasing those. That's like a great reason to get together with friends if you have people who also do that. And I happen to know there are lots of people in Berlin who do that. And you can hang out and meet with them, use your daily practice, maybe have them as a buddy where you read what you wrote sometimes. Buddies in the daily practice, they don't give each other advice. They just give each other a witness. They're like, I heard you. Thank you for sharing that with me. Yep, that sounds hard. Yeah, I've had that happen too. They might say that much, but they don't get it. You know what you have to do? We don't do that in the daily practice. You just have room to sort of release and say what it is, what all those fearful, resentful thoughts are. After you've asked for them to be removed, and enjoy the relatedness of being with people who get it, and all of you are still here and laughing together. So I wish you well. I hope the war ends very soon. I hope you meet somebody who loves you intensely and fully, just like you love them, before too long. One of my great pleasures in life, and sometimes something that really hurts my feelings, is reading all the comments in YouTube. This is the most incredible experience of my life, putting ideas out there and then hearing from hundreds of people, their ideas, their feelings, their experiences. I'm learning so much about people. Now, I receive letters from people through a special address that you can always find down in the description section where to send those letters. But sometimes I see a comment that I really want to respond to a little more in depth than I could write in the comments section. And so today I've pulled together a handful of these comments, and I'm just going to go through lightning round here and answer them. All right? So, first, I'm struggling to work something out, says a commenter. When you come across something that triggers you, do you face it or try to avoid it? All right, that is such an important question. And here's my answer. You avoid your trigger when you have no tools at all and no support, and to get triggered would throw you into so much dysregulation that you can't function. Then you avoid triggers. But here's the price if you keep doing that for too long. You go into isolation. Isolation and avoiding and self-suppressing is what a traumatized person does as sort of a handy way to control triggers. But the better way that allows your life to keep growing is to learn to calm your triggers. And right now that may sound like rocket science to you, but believe me, there is a way to start calming your triggers. And that's what we talk about here. If you'd like to start calming your triggers, it helps to first recognize that triggers are a stimulus outside yourself. And I know there's like this common language use of the word trigger. And when people say that, they mean it makes them mad or something, or it hurts their feelings. But I'm talking about a stimulus sets off neurological dysregulation in your brain and nervous system that makes you begin to have symptoms of dysregulation that are inhibiting to your cognition, your blood flow, your hand coordination, your emotional self-regulation, your hormones. All of these things can get dysregulated from stress when you have a history of trauma. So a trigger is something that sets off that storm. Should you avoid triggers? Yes, if you have absolutely no tools or support. When you have tools and support, you can begin, when you get triggered, to go, oh, here it is, and you can start to use your tools. The tool that I'm always sharing with people here, I use what I call the daily practice. It's a technique for writing fearful and resentful thoughts. Those are the negative feelings that come up around triggers. And then releasing or asking for them to be removed, and then resting in meditation. That's the gist of it. If you want to learn it, don't just take my little summary. Like, it's a free course. The link is always in the description section. I'd love to have you take it. You can learn and try it in less than an hour. And if you do take it, you can join me in free Zoom calls that I lead every 2 weeks. And it's a very powerful community, and it's a lot of people finding out that a lot of the traumatized, the burden of CPTSD, a lot of it doesn't even have to be talked about, that a lot of it can be released on paper as it comes up. Twice a day you sit down and write, and you can write again as needed. And then twice a day you follow the writing with meditation. And it's calming. It's calming. And if you do this twice a day, a lot of people will notice within a week or even sooner that they're starting to be less reactive to their triggers. That's ideal. Now, you may say to yourself, but that's not fair. You know, I'm triggered because this person is screaming and ranting, or they're keeping me awake at night. Yes, that might be true. There's a sane action to take in response to that. I don't know what it is in your case. But when you're all dysregulated, you're going to have a hard time knowing what to do or doing it well. You know, if you go run up to their door and start banging on it and go about their noise, is probably not going to go well. But you, regulated, can figure out a better solution. It's not pleasant, but you want your best brain, your best, calmest emotions and clear thinking at your disposal when you have to deal with life's difficulties, right? So that's why I say learn to calm your triggers. You cannot make people stop triggering you. You can ask. So an example that people often say is like, I have a friend who smokes cigarettes and she goes outside the house, but it's wafting in the window. And I say, can you not do that? All right. So you can ask. If it's your house, you can set a boundary, right? But sometimes the boundaries you set with people, they won't respect them and they'll just keep doing it. Or they will respect it, but too late, you're triggered anyway. You're just triggered. And for that, it's helpful to get into reality and just recognize that you can ask people if they don't want to respond to the boundaries that you're setting. The only boundary you have is to step back. But a tool that you can use when you're in that gray zone of like, do I abandon this friend? Do I just put up with it? What do I do? Is you can calm your triggers, and sometimes it's not so bad. Sometimes when you're not triggered, well, you either see choices or you don't feel so bothered in the first place. So that's what I recommend to you in this case. If you don't learn to heal your triggers, the price you pay is isolation. And a lot of people are living frozen, isolated, or just maniacally trying to control other people because they haven't learned to control their triggers. And none of those options are any good. You don't want to be trying to make other people stop triggering you. It's a losing battle. It will make you unliked. It will put you into a permanent state of conflict with the world. Learning to calm your triggers. From there, you can make requests and set boundaries in a better way. Second question, how does one break a trauma bond? And they say this person never committed as a boyfriend, but has always been hot and cold, on and off, done exactly what pleases me, but then neglects me. I've gone months, a year, even 2 to 3 years not talking to him. When my last serious relationship ended, which I thought would put the nail in the coffin with this other guy, I ran back to him. Every low I have in life, I use this person as an unhealthy coping mechanism. I'm going to circle that. Use him as an unhealthy coping mechanism. Now, I'm gathering that he doesn't mind, but that this is like a booty call. Okay? I think it's a booty call, and I think you're making the call. No judgment. I'm just saying I think that's what's happening. And then you said he treats you as a woman who can do whatever she wants, no rules, no criticisms. And so if he perceives you that way, is that because you are pretending to feel that way? That's what we call being a cool girl. It's okay, you know, whatever, I'm cool. No rules. You don't have to do anything. So then you say, my religious family and some friends hold high expectations and are disappointed when I become messy and unhinged. Well, probably you're disappointed when you become messy and unhinged. And I think messy and unhinged is so well said. I know what you mean. You said, I suffer from mental health problems, but because I'm both gifted and special ed, I feel judged often. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I know why I run to this guy. I can be nothing, do nothing, engage in pleasure, no judgment. Okay, so maybe you have an unconscious wish to have this no strings relationship, but I guess then your emotions get the better of you. You say it's trauma bonding. Is it that you want it to get closer? You want it to be a true romance? I don't know. You're not quite saying that. So either you feel that way, but you're not owning it, but you say it's a trauma bond. You feel like you should leave. You feel like you should get away, but you keep going back, that he's withholding love, I think is why you're calling it a trauma bond. You said, I know there's no growth, and that's dangerous. It's not necessarily dangerous, but it could tie up your emotional availability as long as you have all of it going into this relationship that goes nowhere. And then you can't have a relationship more to your liking, more what you want. So you said, if my community would just allow me some grace, I wouldn't run to this person. That's the part I don't understand. That sounds to me like you're externalizing responsibility for the fact that you run to this person, that they are judging you, and so you have to run to him. And I don't really follow you with that. I think you can run to him or not run to him if you want, regardless of what they think. Sounds like you're not really that driven by what they think, but you'd rather be thought of well, right? Who wouldn't? So you say, I'm a bully to myself, a perfectionist to the core. How do I fix my internal wounds? How do I stop comparing and feeling less than and seeking love and empathy from abusers who want to take advantage of my vulnerability? Whoa, okay, so suddenly that went to abusers. So unless there's a piece of this story you haven't mentioned, I'm not hearing abuse. I'm hearing this guy is open for a casual relationship with you whenever you call, but nothing more. And you call him, and you kind of like it. So I don't think he's taking advantage of you. It's possible that you're in conflict with yourself. So apologies if I missed something in your letter, but I just don't hear abuse here. This is a casual relationship that, as far as he knows, is something you're both on the same page about. That's what you're describing. But it's not really how you feel. So I think what you're saying is you'd like to get out. And you can get out. And sometimes sometimes even when you recognize that your hurt and your low self-esteem and your trauma wounds are getting in the way of you being able to leave, you have to leave anyway and trust that leaving will make space for you to do the healing. When you get out of a relationship that's dragging you down and you instead go for getting tools for healing and the support of people who are walking that path with you, there is no stopping you. You can do so much change under those circumstances, but so many of us stay locked out of those decisions to actually stop doing the thing that's dragging us down and begin doing tools and support. And those can be a lot of things. Whatever works for you. It could be therapy, it could be books, it could be 12-step groups. You could come into my membership program. All of those have ways to get, well, maybe not books, but the support of other people who are walking a similar path is very powerful to help you process the feelings that come up and get some reflection on, is it just me? Am I seeing this accurately? To get that feedback. It's really important. Left to our own devices, we will kid ourselves. Okay. Somebody else asked about a trauma bond, and a trauma bond is the word. Some people say trauma bond when what they mean, you didn't, but some people, they say it when they mean two people who are very traumatized, who are attached to each other because they're very traumatized. But actually what a trauma bond is it refers to intermittent reinforcement, which is when somebody love bombs, withdraws, gets really in there, withdraws, tells you you're great, tells you you're crap, it's like on, off. And so sometimes people are doing this manipulatively. I think in most cases, it's just the dynamic of a relationship. I love you, let's break up, I love you, let's break up. Maybe they're both doing it, and they both get trauma bonded. It makes it very hard to leave. It activates something that's hard to leave. And the thing is, it's not just traumatized people. You can do this. The intermittent reinforcement is a word that came up around the psychology of hostages. You can cause animals to get trauma bonded, where they cling ever tighter the worse you treat them, as long as you alternately treat them really great. They really want the cookie, even if you're being abusive. So it does sound like that's why you're attached. That if that's what you think, that's what I think too. This is another question about trauma bonding. I know this is about romantic relationships, they say about some video they just watched, but it reminds me of my relationship with my mom. She was never abusive, but mostly an inconsistent figure in my life and wasn't able to parent effectively. I've now learned she definitely shows signs of CPTSD herself. Is trauma bonding with a parent a thing? You bet it is. Parents invented trauma bonding. Yes, and the trouble is, with trauma bonding, once you've gotten into it once, there's a little pattern there that's kind of easier to activate with other people. So if you had this with a parent, I had it with my parent. My mom was an alcoholic. And most of the time she was drunk, and she was drunk enough that she couldn't really pay attention to my needs fully, but she kind of could. And I can remember a couple of times, less than I can count on my hand, when she sobered up for a short spell. And I will never forget it. It was amazing. And the way that she was so intelligent and caring, and she took me shopping for shoes. I really needed shoes. I got these sandals, and, I'll never forget when she sobered up, and then she drank again. And then when she was dying of cancer, she sobered up and she was like, can you help find all the alcohol in the house and get rid of it? And I was trying to be all cool. Sure, I'll help find all the alcohol and get rid of it. And I was like, yay, finally. And then within a couple of weeks, she was drinking again. And the doctor had said, if she drinks again, she'll die. And eventually she did, but not from the drinking, actually. So, but I was freaking out. I was freaking out, and the feeling that it could get better sucked me in emotionally to get my expectations way up again, and then so angry that she let me down again. And many people who have watched my videos have heard me say, I have a regret that I wish I hadn't had, it was so long ago. I was only 30, and I hadn't started recovering yet, and I had no idea the nature of alcoholism. I really thought that if she loved me, she would change. And now I understand that with alcoholism, that's not how it works, that it's got control of them so much. And most alcoholics feel ashamed of how they let other people down. It was nothing personal, the way she failed to take care of me. But I was trauma bonded, and I expected a lot from her, and I was really angry, and I regret it. Being angry at her at the end of her life couldn't have been nice for her, and it wasn't nice for me, and it denied me of any opportunity to just like have a conversation or learn about her life. So that's probably one reason why you'll see me here when people talk about going no contact or setting boundaries with people. I'm like, take it one day at a time. You might realize one day that you wish you had it, even though you know you're never going to get it back. Even though you know your parent is not psychologically, constitutionally able to love you back. You may make a choice at certain times to be in their life or help them out in some way. So you don't have to make any permanent pronouncements about anything unless you decide that's what you want. So, okay. Next question. Could dysregulation lead to seizure disorders? I read that the first time I read it, I was like, how do I know? I don't know about seizures. I'm not a doctor. But then I started thinking about it. I've seen people have a seizure before. I've never had one. But the little that I know about it, or what I could feel about it by watching somebody have a seizure, I noticed it was as if something came over them, and I know it's a neurological storm of sorts. What I have is not seizures, but I get migraines sometimes, which is its own kind of neurological storm. And some of you are doctors, and you have better information about this, and you can share in the comments about what's similar or different from migraines and seizures. But they're both neurological. And they both are something that sort of come over a person. So I can feel a migraine coming. I didn't used to. It used to just totally broadside me, but I can feel it coming now. There's a certain feeling. I sometimes get the visual auras, but not so much anymore. Over the span of my life, at different phases of my life, it changes from like super aura, terrible, nauseous migraine to something more subtle than that, to now, if somebody, like if I so much as like get upset or dysregulated at all, boom, migraine, but just a little one. I don't even have to take anything about it. And I can usually like drink a glass of water, close my eyes for a little while and get through it. So that's fairly mild, but I can feel it. It comes over like a storm. And when it passes, there's this beautiful, peaceful feeling. The post-drome, is that what it's called? There's this peaceful feeling like it just rained outside. And I think that I mostly only get migraines when I'm dysregulated, like something upsets me and boom, I go into dysregulation. And so I associate with dysregulation too. It's something that comes over me, and then for a period of time it storms, the storm rages, and then I come back from it. And I have tools that I use to come back. I have 10 emergency measures to re-regulate. Do you have that yet? If you don't, I'll be sure to put it down in the description. And so this, I know how to get re-regulated to the best of my ability as quickly as I can, and it works. And when finally the storm passes, it's something that passes. And then there's this peaceful feeling with dysregulation, with migraines. And I started asking myself, is it the same thing? Is it like an epileptic seizure? I don't know. But one thing, again, if anybody has knowledge about this, I'm interested to hear it. I'm very interested in this kind of thing. But I did do some Googling around, and I learned about something called PNES, and that stands for psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. And those are attacks that look like epileptic seizures, but they're not. And instead, they're caused by psychological factors. So basically, it sounds like a trauma response to me, but I don't know. I got this from epilepsy.com. And so, understandably, their focus is not primarily trauma, but epilepsy. So if you know about this, tell me. I'm interested. They're fairly common. Sometimes a specific traumatic event can be identified. And the only reliable test to tell if it's an epileptic seizure or a PNES is a video EEG monitoring. And I presume that means You see the outward signs of a seizure, but you don't see the brain activity associated with a seizure. It can be hard to treat because it's considered somatic. So what somatic means is we're physicalizing an intense stress, a trauma reaction. It becomes physicalized. So I believe that I kind of went into a somatic reaction set of symptoms. I had a major surgery some years ago. That surgery fell apart. It couldn't heal. And this was at a very traumatic time in my life. And there certainly was not none of the doctors or surgeons, I ended up having 14 major surgeries. Nobody ever said, do you have a lot of trauma in your life? But the surgeries never worked. Like they kept repairing stuff. They tried this, they tried that, they tried the other thing, and it always fell apart. And the surgeon kept saying, this is so weird. There's only like a 3% chance that this wouldn't work, but you're always in the 3%. And then one day, after I had given up on any more surgery, like it wasn't going to work, and I had to have all these appliances to compensate for all the damage done. One day I realized that I thought that I had actually recovered, and the doctor checked me and I had recovered, and I was able to lose the medical appliances. And I asked her, well, has this happened before? Because she had told me a couple years before, there's nothing more I can do. There's no way this can heal. I'm very sorry. You're going to have to live with it. And I had accepted it. I wasn't even looking for healing, but because I was so unhappy and traumatized at that time in my life, for reasons even more than that I was in and out of the hospital for 4 years. It was a very hard time in my life, and I had finally, this all was going down when I had left my daily practice techniques. I went back to them and I got going, and then I started seeking help and mentorship from people I respected. It had been years at that point since I had let other people direct me or asked for help. It was the most wonderful time in my life, even though I was crying all the time. I had really hard stuff going on, but I was finally willing to be totally honest, and I was very willing and open-minded about what needed to change, even when I didn't know what needed to change, and things started to change. And so when this healing occurred and I went and got it checked out, it took me a while to get my insurance company to even authorize it because my case was officially unfixable. And so I said, well, if I'm wrong, I will pay for this visit. But I went in and saw the surgeon, and she was like, huh? And I said, has this happened before? Have you seen this? And she said, I've seen miracles, not this one. So I now know probably what the miracle was that I was somaticizing my trauma at the time. And then in due time, I was able to unsomaticize my trauma. I was able to process it in a healthy way, not by running it through my body as a somatic response. I was out on paper. I was getting help. I was making positive changes away from abusive and terrible, upsetting, shameful situations that I kept finding myself in at the stressful time. And my life straightened out. Everything I teach, 80% of it is from this period of my life when I learned the daily practice long before that, and then I learned how to get my life together. And that's what I teach around here. So just all of this talking about somatic healing, whether it's seizures, whether it's dysregulation, whether it's migraines. Some people say, and not just me, but research shows a very high correlation of chronic health disorders, autoimmune disorders, that these are highly correlated with the history of trauma. And one of the best things we can do is calm those triggers and calm that trauma response so that our body can do what it does, so that our body can respond with an immune system, with hormones, with blood flow, with attention, with calm emotions. Like that's the sweet spot for facing life's ups and downs. So that's what I'm saying. That's my little lesson in there for you. All right, the next question is, self-centered people. All right, this was in response to a video I did a couple weeks ago about a woman had a relationship. A guy left her because she was very dysregulated and very ambivalent about the relationship and not fully conscious. She had a lot of unconsciousness about what she really wanted, and she kept sort of blurting out, I don't want this relationship. And eventually he left. And she felt a lot of regret for it. The guy, the fake name I gave him was Mark. So this comment was about that video and said, I ran into people like Mark when I was much more involved in wellness communities. It seemed that a lot of us aggressively pursued healing modalities like meditation, yoga, mindfulness, consciousness expanding, etc., in order to find stability and certainty. And I remember a lot of talk about trusting other people with our wounds and asking people outright if they will be there, and being rather demanding on how conscious or, quote, purposeful a relationship needed to be, often quite early. And I remember meeting a guy who spoke a lot about quantum consciousness, mindfulness, etc. All right, so I kind of know the type you're talking about here. I know about this. Sometimes it can go south, for sure. So the commenter says, my dad died a few months after we met. I was in another state caring for my dad. I called him a few days after my dad died, and he said something about him being glad I wasn't attached. That sounds like some spiritual statement that, oh, good, you're not having bad feelings. That would be convenient for him to believe that about her, because then he doesn't have to support you. And you said, a week or two after I returned home, he sent me a 10-page essay of his thoughts and feelings on awareness. I had no bandwidth for any of it, and I closed the document. I skimmed it a few weeks later. During that time, he followed up and asked if I had received it. I thought that was odd. Eventually, I acknowledged it with a 1 or 2 line response. I was still reeling from my dad's death, and he seemed terribly offended that I did not consider his thoughts. I did not respond to him after that. Yes, I know the type. And this is the thing. When you go into any sort of healing community, whether it's, psychological, spiritual, religious, you're going to have a high concentration, higher than average concentration than outside those communities, of people who are messed up, of people who are having problems in their lives and with other people because they lack empathy and they're basically self-centered, right? So let me talk about the terms self-centered and selfish, because I think what you're describing in this comment is both self-centered and selfish. And those are they have 2 slightly different meanings. Self-centeredness is just being all about yourself. How do I feel about this? What do I think? My essay. Selfishness is not giving another person what is fair to give them. So selfishness could be a parent who doesn't care for their child. It could be a contractor who doesn't deliver the services that were already paid for, right? That would be selfish. Or it could be somebody, I presume you were sleeping with him, you were seeing him for a few months and your dad died, and rather than talk to you about your feelings, he talked to you about his selfish considerations. That's selfishness. He did not give you what was your due, and that's why it feels wrong. I don't know if you were sleeping with him, but luckily you got out of there after that. You saw him for what he was. People who are selfish are the worst people to have in your life as friends or partners. They do not have anything to give, and the only people who fit with them are traumatized people who are crap fit professionals, right? Where you learn to fit yourself to a totally unacceptable situation or person because you were trained to do that as a kid. Probably you used your imagination to, make it work, to see love where there was no love. But that's not a good thing to do. It's a survival technique for a kid, and it's good you did that. I don't know if you did that, commenter, but many of us do. But then, when you grow up, it becomes a maladaptation to keep fitting yourself to crap. And what that looks like is often a sort of codependent desire to try to change somebody or fix them. You get together with somebody who's in a broken state and then nag them incessantly. If you would just be fixed, I could be happy. Or you get together with somebody who's never showed you genuine interest. But because of the abuse and neglect of your childhood, maybe you confused the sexual attraction between you that lasts for a couple months as a promising romance. And then gradually you realize, oh my gosh, this person doesn't care about me at all. And then you try to retrofit them and you be crying, begging, come on, I deserve this, wheedling with them. I'm proud of you that you didn't do any of that. You just got out, which is sane, lucid. It's not there. It's not there. It was an illusion that they had it to give. And it's very compelling when they're sitting there talking about being present and conscious and purposeful. Conscious and purposeful together is part of a particular spiritual thing, I know. I have a video about this, and you'll see this sometimes in spiritual, maybe religious, maybe self-helpy type things, where there's a jargon that people can use to sort of dress up some very flimsy casual sexual relationship. And then they use weird language on you, like, hey, you're getting all up in your head, when you're like, hey, wait a minute, is this just casual sex? Hey, let's not put a label on it or think in the future. Hey, you hear me laughing. You hear how good I can quote it, and you know why. I've been there before, and it's I'm so much better now. Well, I'm married now, and I've been with my husband for 15 years. And what a relief. What a relief to be out of that soup. But, I spent a very long time as a single person and kind of navigating that world where people would just bullshit you about this stuff and sort of it sounded good. And my healing came when I got real with myself, when I got real with them, with people out there, and could just like directly ask a question and get clarity. What are you actually saying here? What are you proposing? Is this a date? Are you talking about a relationship? Where is this coming from? And if you confront people like that and they sort of go, hey, you're not being in the present, breathe or something, you have your answer right there. Bullshit. It's not real. Okay. Breathing is never, look, if you didn't breathe, you'd be dead. So I'm just saying. All right. The last question here I was going to take on. This one's kind of interesting. A little bit longer than the other ones. All right. Somebody says, I would really love a video on the other parent, the victim parent, and our loyalty towards them, which keeps us from going no contact with the main abuser. So I think this is from somebody who would, yeah, I've read this. Okay. Are they savable? Can you save the other parent? No, savable. Gosh. Who is savable even under the best of circumstances? All right. In our adult life, they stay under the narcissistic influence. They're talking about the victim parent of the most abusive parent if they stay married. And this is funny. You're talking about that triangle of like abuser, victim, and savior. Do you know that? Do you know you're just kind of putting everybody in a role here that's notorious? Can somebody tell me who's the source of that? Anyway, it's a notorious trap. These are roles that nobody is actually neatly in, but I get your point. Okay. In your adult life, they stay under the narcissistic influence of the most abusive parent if they stay married, and their inability to protect us. The victim parent was obviously also abusive by being neglectful, by not protecting us and not taking us away from that situation and not showing us how to put up boundaries. Yes, that's passive abuse. To have compassion, hurt, and resentment all at the same time is very difficult. And even the victim parent might have developed many narcissistic or codependent traits, you bet, as well, if they didn't have them already, because probably they got into and stayed in this type of relationship because they were already traumatized and they already had unhealthy traits. So the commenter says, I'm almost 40 and I don't have compassion left in me for either of them. I should start giving them that to myself. I'm hesitating just because that's something that people say that I never quite relate to, but I know people feel that way. Okay. I realize that I should go no contact with both of them and stop fooling myself that I can change them or get them to see the damage that they've done and truly apologize and develop themselves in their 70s. Okay, cut to the chase. No, you can't, actually. You can't get them to see what they've done or change themselves. Here, I'll read the rest of your letter. I know what I read it through before and I just know where this is going. I realize that I should go no contact with both of them and stop fooling myself that I can change them. I might be looking for some go-ahead to start spending my soul energy on myself and to start living and stop underachieving because they like me best in that position. Maybe. The quality I need, I'm going to try to say this as I read through it. I think you're externalizing something there. Who cares if they want you in that position? If you're not achieving at the age of 40 and blaming it on your parents, I'm just going to give you just a little nudge here. Forget them. Have contact with them or don't have contact with them, but stop blaming them for holding you back now. Yes, they traumatized you. Yes, it's been hard. But the solution lies in taking back all your power, whether you have contact with them or not, to start running your life properly. So if you're not achieving, that's something that you're going to need to address. I think what I'm hearing is this fantasy that if you can get them to see what they did, they'll apologize, and then somehow you'll be gifted with the motivation to take care of your life and be compassionate towards yourself. But I don't think that's what first of all, I don't think they're going to change. I don't think they're going to get what they want. You can't save them. They're just being them. They're being them and you're being you. And you be you with all your wheels on the ground, start solving your problems. This is the job in front of you. It doesn't really have to do with them anymore. The quality I need to move on, which is compassion for myself and therefore going no contact. I don't think those are actually, you can have compassion for yourself whether or not you go no contact. I'm just saying. And I wouldn't be telling you that, except the rest of your letter is about how guilty you feel. I'm just saying, look, it's a choice. You can have compassion for yourself and keep contact open if you choose. Going no contact is what you do when you can't deal with it. It just always brings you down. But technically, when you have enough healing, people being crazy like that, you'll become more detached from it. Your triggers will be calmer. It won't dictate how you feel about yourself or how you run your life. It'll be sort of upsetting, and then you'll be like, oh, it's that upsetting thing, and then you just carry on. That's the ideal state. But not all of us are there yet. And so no contact is something that you can decide on one day at a time, or 1 week at a time, or 1 year at a time, as needed to just get your bearings. And it sounds like you have a craving to just sort of experience life and your own feelings without them triggering you all the time. But they're not going to stop. And you can learn to calm your triggers. I just want to put that in front of you if you choose. You said, I need to lose hope. I agree, lose hope. They're not going to change. Because whatever they do or don't do, I keep adjusting my boundaries because every time it hurts too much to see that they don't care about my feelings at all. I hear you. I know. But it's true. Let it in. It is what you think it is. They're broken. They probably, they care, but they care in their selfish way. They might both be narcissistic is what I've come to realize. Yeah, well, that's a label, and whatever you call it, I would just encourage you, just look at it for what it is. It makes you feel a certain way. It's a behavior you don't approve of or like. It upsets you. It just is what it is. So don't worry about labeling it. And I think there's a concern there like, oh, if it's narcissism, they can never change, but maybe it's CPTSD and they can. I would say in their 70s, if they are not coming to you saying, we're changing, we see the error of our ways, we're trying to do all this stuff, please forgive us. That would be one thing, but it's not that. So it doesn't really matter what the cause is or how you would diagnose it. In fact, I think that the more people get into trying to diagnose the people who hurt them, it prolongs their enmeshment with them. It prolongs them being at the effect of their behavior. And the sooner you just go, I don't know, that's whatever, it's them. I'm me. I'm going to get my life together. That's a sweet spot. That's where you want to be. So they have been so unhappy all my life, she says. Psychiatry has been wrong so much. I don't necessarily believe that highly narcissistic people have zero chance to feel and get better. Well, it doesn't matter what psychiatrists think or narcissism. I just think realistically, your parents are just how they are. I don't expect them to change from how they are right now. So it's just shouldn't be my responsibility. I know. Well, it's not. And it's also, here's where I'm going to call you out a little bit. It's delusional to think that you're responsible or that you can save them. That's an inflated ego thought that you can do that. You can't. If you could have, you would have by now, right? But I've been taught I'm responsible for how they feel. Okay, don't externalize that. Whatever people said to you, it doesn't matter. You know better. You're 40 years old. You're writing this letter. You know you're not responsible for their feelings. There's many books on codependence and Al-Anon and things like that, where if you need support to really live in that truth, I can't affect how other people feel. It's so difficult to get rid of the desire. Of course it is. And when I see older people on the street, I'm almost crying because they look so hurt and my parents look so sad as well. And by the way, I've always been the truth teller and I've always rebelled against how they treated me. So it's a history of war. So all right, you've expressed yourself to them. It sounds like you guys have a high conflict relationship. My gut feeling is just that some peace inside about this with your acceptance of them being them and you being you. And it just sounds like you have some stuff that's not going well in your life where you believe that you're responsible for other people's feelings. That's codependence. That's a very terrible condition. And that's something you fix. That doesn't go away because they change. That goes away because you work on it. And I hope you will. There's a lot of peace and happiness there for people who work on this and start to have a little bit of, detachment from this belief in cause and effect. They did this and therefore I'm this way. And if they would change, I would be better. No, it's not really like that. It's an inside job at this point. So I hope you find it.